African Renaissance. The concept that the African people and nation shall overcome the current challenges confronting the continent and achieve cultural, scientific, and economic renewal is here, with young men and women taking the lead. Some call them the new school heroes. We call them under 40 CEOs.
Ran Neuner graduated from the University of Witwatersrand with a Bachelor of Commerce degree and also as a certified financial analyst. Having the added qualification of entrepreneurial drive, he was ready to be unleashed onto the world of real business. After a number of business ventures, Neuner started the Creative Counsel, a below-the-line activations company with school friend Jill Oved in 2001. Their passion and creativity paid off, and today, the Creative Counsel is South Africa's leading activations agency with an annual turnover of 500 million rands. In 2010, Ran joined the Young Presidents Organization, a global network of successful CEOs where he is an active member. He has also taken on an exco role for the Johannesburg City chapter. Ran Neuner is co-CEO at the Creative Counsel. All right, welcome to Under 40 CEOs, Ran.
Thank you for having me.
All right, a publication once described you as an entrepreneur from birth. And then you also delivered a presentation in 2016, aptly titled, I Am an Entrepreneur. Now, at what point did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur?
I think I was born an entrepreneur. I think it was very accurate that said I was an entrepreneur from birth, because my first entrepreneurial venture was actually when I was 3.5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And what happened was I learned how to use a pair of scissors. And so when the domestic went outside to do the washing, I cut out pictures from an old calendar that my dad threw away.
Really?
And then I ran out the house and I went selling them door to door. And I came back 24 hours later. 24 hours later, the 3.5-year-old child is gone. And I came back and there was a room with my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles and the police, and there was a missing child report. But I came back with a pocket full of money. And I knew from that day on that I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Crazy story.
A crazy story. Now, from the records, it shows that your background was in finance and investment, having attended the University of Witwatersrand.
That's it.
You got your Bachelor of Commerce in, I believe, finance and investment. And subsequently, you went to the American Institute of Investment and Management Research, where you got your where you became a chartered financial analyst.
Correct.
Now, how did you get into advertising?
I'm a businessman. I love business. And it doesn't really matter what the business is, as long as you're in business. Now, what I found is, in this specific game, I found that we were selling, which I love, we were marketing, and we were doing good business. So selling, marketing, and doing good business. And that's why I think that this business, why I did so well in this business, because it was a combination of all my skills combined.
Doing so well is what you've done, because at 40, you're the CEO and, of course, co-founder, owner of TCC, and you employ over 1,500 employees full-time.
That's correct. We created an industry. When we got into this industry, the biggest company in the industry was doing a turnover of $2 million a year. That was the biggest company in the industry. Today, we do a turnover of, in dollars, about $60 million a year.
Wow.
So we've really created an industry.
So what was the vision for TCC in the early days?
I wish I could tell you there was a vision, but the vision was survival. Make some money and survive. You know, the interesting thing is, if you look at the history of how I got into TCC, you'd be quite surprised. Because, to cut a long story short, I started a business in 1998. I raised $2 million on the markets. And by 2000, that business had exploded in the dot-com bubble. And I was technically insolvent. I had no money, I had no confidence. And the only thing that I had on my CV was the fact that I was a failed entrepreneur. That was what my CV had. And I had a girlfriend, and she was doing in-store promotions. She was doing sampling of toothpastes in the store. And I went to visit her one day. And a few things happened. The first thing is, she wasn't there. The second thing is that I saw 60 other people in the store doing these promotions, and all of them were bad. And then I realized there's a huge industry in this game called promotions. And being an entrepreneur, I found the gap, I took the gap, and today we have South Africa's biggest marketing agency.
Wow. So, I mean, yours is a partnership, right, with Jill?
Correct.
And I was speaking to a CEO of a major IT firm in Accra in Ghana recently, and he said to me on the show that anything with two heads is a beast. So how are you able to make this partnership work?
Gil and I have been lifelong friends. We've been friends since high school. This is probably our third or fourth business venture together. And the truth is, it's like being in a marriage. We have our good days and we have our bad days. Some days we love each other, some days we want to kill each other. But the reality is, we are equally aligned. We own the same number of shares in this company. So I know, being in the marriage, that he would never do anything to harm the kids. And he knows that I would never do anything to harm the kids. And so what we found is we found this dynamic thing where I look after certain parts of the business and he looks after certain parts of the business, and never do the two meet. My sales team don't meet his sales team. My companies don't talk to his companies. We only meet at the top at a strategic level. And what it actually is that you're dealing with two CEOs, not one. And so we've got the power of two. And that's what makes it special.
This is Under 40 CEOs.
In 2015, Ran concluded the biggest business transaction in South Africa, where he sold the creative counsel to a French-owned international business, the Publicis Groupe, for just over 2 billion rands. He continues in his role of co-CEO at the Creative Counsel Group as he continues to steer and mentor his team to live by the philosophy, brilliance or nothing. So we first heard in July 2015 that Publicis Groupe was going to take a major stake in your company for about 1 billion rand. And then in September of 2015, we heard the headlines. It was reading, Publicis Groupe acquires SA's largest advertising agency. Tell me what went into making this happen.
It was probably the toughest period of my life. You know, it's quite crazy because when you build a business knowing that you're going to sell a business one day. And then when you start selling a business, you realize how hard it is to actually sell a business. Primarily because you're running two things. On the one hand, what you're doing is you're trying to run your business. On the other hand, you're trying to sell your business, and both take equal time. And also selling a business is not for the faint-hearted, because one day the buyer's interested, the next day they're not, the next day they are, the next day they do a due diligence, the next day they find something right, the next day they find something wrong. And so it's quite a tough process. And from the time we decided we were going to sell our business until the time we concluded the deal, it took us 2 years. 2 years of running the business on the one hand, on what we called Main Street, because we split it. We split it into Main Street and Wall Street. And Wall Street was the sale of the business, and Main Street was the running of the business. Okay. And we toggled between myself and Gil. We kept toggling between who was running the sale, which was primarily me, and then running the business, which was primarily him.
Amazing. Now, making ideas happen, brilliance or nothing, winning by a mile, you know, that's the mantra at TCC. But tell me, what are those key challenges that you've had to overcome to make the strides that you've made so far as a business?
So that's not the mantra of the business. What that is the culture of the business. And if you look at an agency, I mean, we don't have any machines or we don't have any IP. Our IP is our culture. And if you look at the pillars of our culture, you mentioned win by a mile, which means that whenever you go into a pitch or whenever you go into any situation, you got to make sure that you blow the rest out the water. We always say, if there's a fist fight going on downstairs, we come in with an atomic bomb and we blow everything up. And that's our attitude here. Another pillar of our culture is brilliance or nothing. Never deliver anything unless it's brilliant. So you ask yourself, what is that about? And the truth is, what that is the personality of the founders translated into posters on the wall. And if you walk around this business and you ask anybody in this business, what does this business stand for? They'll all answer, brilliance or nothing, win by a mile, colleagues first, grow those that grow our businesses. Because that's how we think as founders. And so culture is not really something that you put posters up on the wall. It's what you live. And that's what we've lived. We've lived that since we were kids. And coincidentally, we've brought that into our business.
Wow, amazing. So tell me, what's the current business structure for TCC?
TCC currently is a group of companies, all with one objective, to change the way consumers act or transact. Okay. We look at where they buy things, what they buy, and how often they buy, and we try and change them. Now, we have a group of companies, like I mentioned, some of them in digital, some of them in social, some of them in on-the-ground activations, some of them in the traditional creative space. We have a whole host of these companies, and they're all owned by the holding company, which is the Creative Counsel.
Okay, amazing. So what are the most critical lessons that you've learned and are willing to share about taking your business from, being bust to being profitable?
So I think the most important lesson is it's okay to not know what you're doing. Because if you are an entrepreneur and if you're taking a chance and if you're doing something amazing, there's no roadmap for that. It means really that you're going to places that nobody else has the guts to go. Now, if you look at a simple country, there are two portions to a country. There's the place where there's roads. As you look outside here, there's roads, and the roads are clearly marked with street signs and maps and whatever else. And then there's a forest. And the guys that get rewarded are the guys that walk into the forest and chop down the trees and create the roads. And so the first lesson is it's okay to not have a clue what the hell you are doing. If I were to tell you that I had a strategy and a vision to get to where I got to, I'd be lying to you. Because the reality is when we started, all we wanted to do was install promotions. And we went into the forest and we started to chop down the trees. And this happened. The second lesson is, or the second most important lesson, is to celebrate failure. Now, you spoke to me a bit earlier about my views on failure. But I believe that success is evil because success teaches you nothing. And success actually breeds arrogance. You get these guys that never failed and they became successful, and you find that they're arrogant. And arrogance is evil. The more you fail, the more you've tried, the more you've learned. And that's why I believe that we should celebrate failure, not celebrate success. And that's one of the biggest paradigm shifts for most entrepreneurs, because what we do is we celebrate successes. But you shouldn't. You should celebrate your failures, because that's when you've learned. And don't be afraid to fail, because if you haven't failed, you haven't tried something new.
That's an amazing perspective right there. Now, how has travel and interacting with diverse cultures, because I know you're very well traveled, impacted on your business and on your person?
When you travel, it depends what kind of eyes you travel with. Now, some people, when they travel with holiday eyes, with vacation eyes. I'm not like that. Whenever I travel, first of all, I like to look at what every country or culture has that we don't have and that we could use. And so for me, every time I travel, it's almost like a fact-finding mission. Going out there to find ideas. And every time I travel, I come back, I've got a whole lot of new ideas. The other thing which is kind of strange, and I think this is going to blow you away a little bit. Entrepreneurs, and specifically what I used to do, I used to work 20 hours a day, and sometimes 16 hours a day, and 18 hours a day. And I used to pride myself on the fact that I was working so hard. So people used to say to me, well, how much did you work? And I said, oh, you won't believe it, I worked for 20 hours. I worked for 16 hours. And the truth is, in hindsight, I wish that I'd taken more time without working. Because when you're working, you're not actually thinking. And big things happen when you think, not when you do. And I always say to my staff, if you're thinking, you're not doing, and if you're doing, you're not thinking. So you've got to choose, are you a thinker or are you a doer? And this paradigm happened to me when I was on an airplane, actually. And my laptop battery died. And I had a 6-hour flight to get home. And I had no battery, and I couldn't use my mobile phone because we didn't have signal in the air.
Wow.
And I had 6 hours of nothing. And let me tell you, I solved all the world's problems in those 6 hours. Well, certainly my world's problems.
This is Under 40 CEOs.
In 2016, Ran received the National Business Awards Business Leader of the Year, as well as AdFocus's Industry Leaders Award. He has received other notable awards, including the All Africa Business Leaders Award. Okay, now you and your team have won, numerous awards. You've received accolades, nominations. What are these accolades, nominations, and awards? What do they mean to you?
And it's so funny because I remember when we won our first award, I almost didn't go to the awards evening. And the reason why I didn't go is because, so what if you win? All you get is you get a medal, or you get a trophy and maybe a certificate. And then I realized that it's not about that. It's about two things. The first thing is a small thing, and that is, as entrepreneurs, we don't celebrate success. We never take the 2 minutes to say, we want to celebrate success. The second thing, and the more important thing, is that it gives you credibility. And that credibility gives you a platform to go out and inspire others to do what you did. When I go and talk at various entrepreneur workshops, etc., and I mention that I won Entrepreneur of the Year and All Africa Business Leader of the Year, all of a sudden I get this credibility and people listen to me. And that's my passion, inspiring others to do what I did quicker and with less scars.
I love it. And inspiring people is what you're doing right now. And of course, you've also set aside 50 million rand
Yes.
To fund young entrepreneurs. Would you say it's you're taking the angel route, or is it a venture capital route?
Let's look at what my intentions were.
Okay.
South Africa, I think everyone knows the atrocities of what happened in South Africa. What they don't realize is that those atrocities left an entrepreneurial void in this country. So when I go to Nigeria, the one thing that I really like about Nigeria is the fact that everyone's entrepreneurial and everyone's trying to make a buck and everyone has a plan. In South Africa, we don't have that. And the reason is because our guys, and specifically our black, young, very talented entrepreneurs, they were oppressed. Their parents were taken from being entrepreneurs to becoming workers. And so they never had that motivation at home. And today, when they need a network, or they need to call someone, or they need some advice, they don't have anyone to go to. So I pledged 50 million rand of my own money for one simple reason, to get entrepreneurship going in South Africa. How? Mentorship, guidance, and hard cash given to worthy young entrepreneurs who don't have a sense of entitlement, who want to work hard, who want to break barriers, who want to do amazing things. I'll invest in them.
All right. We all know that human resource is an element you need to consider when building any enterprise. How do you typically hire one? And how would you advise a startup to hire?
Yes, human resources is a big problem when you're starting up.
Yeah.
Usually startups have a startup mentality or a small business mentality, and I had that mentality. And I'll admit that that's probably been my biggest business downfall. Because when it comes to hiring someone, you're always faced with a choice of whether you should hire the cheapest guy or the most expensive guy. Now, typically in the past, I always thought of hire the cheapest guy or thereabout and save yourself a whole lot of money. Okay. And the truth is that every time I've done that, I've landed up losing 10 times what I've saved. And so my mindset has changed. My mindset says, number one, hire the best people, even if they're better than you. Sorry, no, especially if they're better than you. The second thing is, how do you hire? Because, there's a lot of smart people out there. How do you hire? And I've worked out that the best way to hire is actually not on degrees or diplomas or smartness or talent, but on culture. So you've got to find like-minded people, people who think like you culturally, innately, people who believe in the same fundamentals as you do. So for me, when I hire someone, do they have that champion culture? Do they believe fundamentally, before they walk in here, do they believe in brilliance or nothing? Do they believe in win by a mile? Do they believe in the values of real partnership, of partnering with real integrity? And if they do, then I hire them. And so the questions that I ask are not, what was your last job and how do you react under stress and where do you want to be in 5 years? But my questions are much more personal questions, because you can't lie about how you are culturally and what your value and belief system is.
So tell me about your leadership style.
When I started at TCC, I was a terrible leader. I was young, I was making a lot of money, and I was running a successful business. And that's a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous combination, I'll admit. Because what that does is it makes you arrogant. And when you're arrogant, you walk around the people around you and you boss them around. And you pretend or you think that you're being a leader. And you're not. You're being, at best, a manager. And then we hired a consultant into our business a few years ago. And he came back with an amazing report. But the report, actually what the report alluded to was, the biggest problem with this business is me. And it's quite a bitter pill to swallow, because you're running an amazing business, but your staff aren't happy. And what the guy recommended, the consultant recommended that I go for coaching, executive coaching. And the executive coaching changed my life. Why did it change my life? Because it taught me one thing, empathy. It taught me to see a situation from how my staff or my followers would see it. And if there's two things that I've learned, the first thing is, if you want to be a good leader, you've got to be empathetic. The second thing that I've learned is, if you ever doubt whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, ask yourself, what a general would do in the time of war. And make sure that you're doing what a general would do in the time of war. Now, you'll notice that when there's a war situation, the generals don't go and fight with the troops on the ground. That's not what generals do, because generals are leaders. They come up with a plan and they make sure that the troops actually follow them. So one of my mentors once said to me, you know, what is the job of a leader? And I said to him, well, the job of a leader is to set culture. And culture means that the troops would do what you would do in the same situation. And he said to me, no, you're wrong. He said the job of a real leader is to be able to identify other leaders. And that's the job of a leader.
How important is delegation to you?
You have to delegate. In the beginning, when you start a business, you know how it is. You believe that you can do everything yourself and that no one is as smart as you and no one can get things done as well as you can get things done. And the truth is that what happens as you mature in business is that you realize the power of delegation, and you realize that if you delegate the right way, now delegation the right way means really empowering people to do something, and even if they don't do it exactly the same as you would do it, it's still good. And that's what real empowerment looks like. And when you start to empower people, they become really excited about what they do. They become excited about owning a project and coming to work. There's a great talk, and the talk is by Dan Ariely. Dan Ariely is a behavioral economist.
Okay.
And the talk is called, Why Do People Come to Work? And despite what some people think, people don't come to work for the salary. They don't even come to work for the bonus or the profit share. People come to work for a sense of purpose. And purpose comes from giving people real delegation, empowering them to do what they do, and giving them or letting them have that sense of satisfaction when they achieve something. And that's what delegation is about. And I'm a big fan.
Wow. So what would you say are those key skill sets that a CEO needs to acquire to, manage people?
The first thing as a CEO you need to acquire experience, business experience. I think that you can't really be a good CEO at the age of 25 because you don't have real business experience. You've got to go through the downs and the ups, and you've got to build what I call your character. Once you've built your character, you can empathize with people, because you can't empathize with people unless you've been in their shoes. Now, when we started this business, I worked in the warehouse. I was the warehouse guy. I was the receptionist. I was the courier guy. I was everything. And so I've done every single job in this business. I've done it. I understand it. I understand what the pitfalls are. I understand what the hardships are. And so, therefore, I can empathize with the people around me. So if you want to be a good CEO, you've got to be empathetic. And if you want to have empathy, you've got to have real business experience.
So I'd like to ask you, what is the biggest letdown that you've experienced in your career so far?
The biggest letdown is when you invest in people and you give your heart and soul more than what is required in the daily course of business, and those people disappoint you. So, I mean, I have this analogy with a few of my staff where I say, I'm like a football manager, and I have 11 players on my team which I can invest in, only 11. And I take the time to give you pitch time, and I nurture you off the pitch. And then I put you on for 90 minutes and I expect you to play, not to disappoint me. And my biggest disappointments are when I put those players on and they don't appreciate the opportunity that they have. And the amount of effort and heart and soul which I put into my people to make sure that we succeed.
Yeah, that can be really something, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can only imagine how Jose Mourinho feels when
This is Under 40 CEOs.
Today, Ran hosts the television show Crypto Trader on CNBC, and he says his view of success is defined by the number of lives that he can positively touch. How does this successful man allocate his resources, and what does he do with his downtime?
I have a few quick fire questions for you. What do you like to eat?
I love all food. I'm a big sushi fan, but I love all food.
How would you describe your fashion style?
Trendy.
What brands do you like to wear?
John Varvatos is my favorite brand in the world. Giorgio Armani is great. I'm a big Boss fan.
What other CEOs do you currently look up to?
I look up to Elon Musk purely because of the way that he looks at problems. He asks different questions.
Okay.
So I really look up to him.
Your favorite car to drive?
I love my Range Rover.
Your favorite travel destination?
Maldives.
Your favorite book of all time?
I read a lot, but I read snackable content.
Okay, beautiful. So lastly, I'd like to know, Ran, what makes you happy?
My family, having a good family life and having a great wife that supports me. That's my sanctuary when I go home. That makes me happy. And then when I come to work, I live my dream. When I say I live my dream, I love business and I do business all day long. And that makes me happy.
Thank you for coming on the 40 CEOs, Ran.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.